The PMBOK guide defines project management, and it's important to remember this definition as well. Project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools and techniques to project activities to meet the project requirements. Project management is accomplished through the appropriate application and integration of the project management processes identified for the project. Project management enables organizations to execute projects effectively and efficiently. Stop for a moment. Did you notice what I just said? Project management enables organizations to execute projects effectively and efficiently. Does that mean the projects can be completed without project management? Yes, that's exactly what it means. Is that a surprise? Many of the tools and techniques for project management were developed in the last century. For example, the Gantt chart, which is the basis of a project schedule, was developed in 1917 by Henry Grant and used in building ships for the First World War. Computerized project scheduling was first used in 1957 for the DuPont organization for decommissioning obsolete factories. And PDM, the precedence diagramming method, also known as activity on node, was invented in the 1960s by John Fondau as a hand-drawn alternative to the activity on arrow method used by computers. Ironically, modern scheduling software is based on John Fondau's hand-drawn precedence diagramming method rather than the activity on arrow method, which was originally used by computers. The critical path was foreshadowed in the 1950s by the US Navy in Critical Chain, but then developed by John Fondau and others into the critical path method. John Fondau also helped to found the Project Management Institute in 1969, and he later served as its president and chairman. Possibly the oldest project management technique has its roots in the second half of the 17th century when Blaise Pascal and Pierre de Fermat developed probability theory, which led to considerable improvements in calculating premiums for shipping insurance. Actual risk management was probably developed in the first half of the 20th century, and then in 1956 Russell Gallagher introduced the term risk management in the Harvard Business Review volume 34. But the point I'm trying to make is that all of the main tools and techniques of project management are quite recent. Now let's think about the building of the pyramids, and that's often stated as one of the first projects. Each one is a very large temporary endeavour that was created as a unique product. This means that by definition the creation of each pyramid passes a test for a project, because if you remember, the pyramids were built for the death of a pharaoh before the pharaoh was actually dead usually, and so that means they'd be working on quite a tight time scale, and so it wasn't considered an operation. Actually, one of the things that really surprised me was I always thought that pyramids had been built by teams of slaves, because that's what we learned in high school. But what was later discovered was that in Egypt they had a type of national service where everyone, when they were late teenagers, they would serve a couple of years of national service, which would include all of the skills for building the pyramids. Okay, so back to the pyramids. We know that they're now a project, but they did not have the tools and techniques of project management. So then they fail the test for being managed by project management. And so this proves that projects can be completed without project management. The PMBOK guide says that effective project management helps individuals, groups, and public and private organizations to meet business objectives, to satisfy stakeholder expectations, be more predictable, increase chances of success, deliver the right products at the right time, resolve problems and issues, respond to risks in a timely manner, optimize use of organizational resources, identify, recover or terminate failing projects, manage constraints, For example, scope, quality, schedule, costs and resources. Balance the influence of constraints on a project. Example, increased scope may increase cost or schedule. And manage change in a better manner. Now when you come to the examination, you'll find there's 200 questions. All of the questions are multiple choice and you're choosing from 4 answers. And you will find there could be a question which will ask something like, how does project management help an organization? And it will be a list of several from the list which I've just read will be the correct answer. The PMBOK guide goes on to say that poorly managed projects or the absence of project management may result in missed deadlines, cost overruns, poor quality, rework, uncontrolled expansion of the project, loss of reputation for the organisation, unsatisfied stakeholders and failure in achieving the objectives for which the project was undertaken. And again, there could be a question in the examination for examples of how the absence of project management can harm an organisation, and they'll be chosen from that list. The PMBOK guide makes an important point that projects are a key way to create value and benefits in organisations. Yet strangely, the definition of a project and the definition of project management do not mention benefits. So if you're familiar with Prince 2, this might seem a bit strange to you. With each passing year, organisations are called upon to do more with less, and I'm sure you're probably in that situation. They have to become ever more efficient. They need to reduce costs and delivery times, but without reducing quality. And that's why on the news we see so much interest in machine learning, artificial intelligence and robots. The robots can either be the type of mechanical robots that build cars, or they could be the software type robots which can enter thousands of invoices in 10 seconds or something. And these are all examples of trying to do more with less. And the only way that they can succeed is by ensuring that projects are managed using robust project management. Otherwise, they will be a drain on the resources instead of adding to their efficiency. And going forward, I can see more and more organisations adapting agile methods of delivery. And you can see that the PMBOK Guide 6th edition has introduced a lot of information on agile methods. Now, there won't be a lot of this asked on the examination. It'll be quite a high level, but still it's coming into the PMBOK. And not only that, whenever you buy the PMBOK Guide, or if you're a member of PMI, you can download an electronic version of the PMBOK Guide free of charge. It also comes with a book on PMI Agile methods. And that brings us to the end of the importance of project management. Please remember to learn the definition of project management for the exam, and also refresh your memory on the list of advantages of project management and the disadvantages of not having project management, in case you get an examination question that too. The next lesson is 1.3, relationship between project, program, portfolio and operations management. Please read the corresponding chapter in the PMBOK Guide before watching the video, so that you can have a good relationship with this course. One point three, relationship of project, program, portfolio and operations management. You will often find in smaller companies in particular, many projects are managed virtually in isolation. The project managers would most likely discuss common dependencies and resourcing, but little more than that. Even though some elements of these projects could be combined and managed more efficiently, that path just isn't followed. However, the projects that are managed isolation, the project management processes, tools and techniques described in the PMBOK guide still gives them a high probability of success. What they're missing really is just that bit of synergy, the bit of efficiency that can be gained by combining them. But as the organisations grow larger, they begin to see that there are benefits to be gained by grouping projects and other related pieces of work together. For example, they can be managed in a coordinated way. Resources can be balanced between the different projects. There can be better communications across projects and clearer oversight by senior management on the whole landscape of projects and how they're progressing. So what are the alternatives for managing multiple projects then? As it turns out, there are three main ones. Option one is simply to continue managing in isolation. Each project is treated as a separate standalone project with minimal information interchange. Note that an extremely large project is called a mega project. The PMBOK guide defines a mega project as one that is expected to cost $1 billion US or more, affect 1 million or more people and run for years. And I would advise remembering that definition because it's new to the PMBOK and there's a good chance that they're going to test us on it. Now, option number two is to collect related projects together into a program. For example, a large mining company might create a program of information technology projects, a second program for mine site construction projects, and a third program for mining operations projects. The PMBOK guide defines a program as a group of related projects, subsidiary programs, and program activities managed in a coordinated way to obtain benefits not available from managing them individually. Then we come to option number three, which is sort of the highest level, if you like. It's a collection of unrelated projects under a portfolio. In the mining example, the company could combine the information technology program, the construction program, the mining program, plus other projects and even some operations work into a portfolio. The PMBOK guide defines a portfolio as projects, programs, subsidiary portfolios and operations managed as a group to achieve strategic objectives. So just remind you, a program is a collection of related projects. A portfolio is generally a collection of unrelated projects or unrelated programs, and key for the exam, remember, it can include some operations as well. The PMBOK guide says program management and portfolio management differ from project management in their life cycles, activities, objectives, focus and benefits. However, portfolios, programs, projects and operations often engage with the same stakeholders and may need the same resources, which may result in a conflict in the organisation. This type of situation increases the need for coordination within the organisation through the use of portfolio, program and project management to achieve a workable balance in the organisation. Now, if we have a look at figure 1.3 from the PMBOK guide, it illustrates a sample portfolio structure indicating relationships between the programs, projects, shared resources and stakeholders. You can see in this diagram that within the portfolio, project 1 is not part of a program. However, it is still managed within the portfolio to obtain benefits not available by managing it as a standalone project. Project 2 and Project 3 have been combined to form Program A. Project 4 and Project 5 have been combined to form Program B1. Project 8 and Project 9 have been combined with some operations work to form Program C. Program B2 and Project 6 have been combined to form Program B. Project 7 and Program C have been combined to form Portfolio A, and everything has been combined to form the sample portfolio. I believe there's actually an error in this diagram. Yes, the PMBOK guide can make mistakes. I believe that Program C is actually a portfolio. Why do I say that? Well, remember the definitions. The PMBOK guide defines a program as a group of related projects, subsidiary programs and program activities managed in a coordinated manner to obtain benefits not available for managing them individually. And a portfolio is projects, programs, subsidiary portfolios and operations managed as a group to achieve strategic objectives. These tell us that a portfolio, not a program, can include operational work. But Program C on the diagram includes operations, which means it is really a portfolio. But anyway, grouping the projects together in this way makes it easier to enforce robust governance and introduce efficiencies and cross-project balancing and prioritization based on risk, funding and other considerations that would not otherwise have been possible. But this structure gives us the big picture view, looking at project, program and portfolio management from an organizational perspective. Program and project management focuses on doing programs and projects the right way, and portfolio management focuses on doing the right programs and projects. And that could be an examination question too. Program management. This is defined as the application of knowledge, skills and principles to a program to achieve the program objectives and to obtain benefits and control not available by managing program components individually. The PMBOK guide says on page 14, a program component refers to projects and other programs within a program. Project management focuses on interdependencies within a project to determine the optimal approach for managing a project. The optimal approach. Program management focuses on the interdependencies between projects and between projects and program level to determine the optimal approach for managing them. Actions related to these program and project level interdependencies may include aligning with your organizational or strategic direction that affects program and project goals and objectives, allocating the program scope into program components, managing interdependencies among the components of the program to best serve the program. That's moving around funding, balancing out the human resources between the projects, trying to control the interdependencies between them, maybe moving projects around so that there's less focus on some interdependencies. Managing project risks that may impact multiple projects in the program, and that can be a big saving if you have a number of projects facing the same fairly major risk, but it's too expensive to deal with for a single project, and you realize, hey, we can deal with this risk for all of these projects. Now it's worthwhile going ahead with it. Resolving constraints and conflicts that affect multiple projects within a program. And as we'll cover later, a constraint is anything that reduces your ability to manage the project. Resolving issues between component projects and the program level. Managing change requests within a shared governance framework. Allocating budgets across multiple projects within the program, which gives you an enormous amount of control, and assuring benefits realized from the program and component projects. So you still have to be able to identify the expected benefits at the start and then check at the end or sometime after the project is finished to make sure those benefits were actually achieved. An example of a program is the development of a new online training course, the development of a web-based learning management system to host and manage the course, and the development of back-end financial systems to manage payment and financial accounting for the course. Portfolio management. A portfolio is defined as projects, programs, subsidiary portfolios and operations managed as a group to achieve strategic objectives. The PMBOK guide says on page 15 that portfolio management is defined as the centralised management of one or more portfolios to achieve strategic objectives. The programs or projects of the portfolio may not necessarily be interdependent or directly related. The aim of portfolio management is to guide organisational investment decisions, select the optimal mix of programs and projects to meet strategic objectives, provide decision-making transparency, prioritise team and physical resource allocation, increase the likelihood of realising the desired return on investment, centralise the management of the aggregate risk profile of all components, and the aggregate means just combined together or added up together. Portfolio management also confirms that the portfolio is consistent and aligned with organisational strategies. And sometimes it's possible to have a project in your organisation, perhaps a small one or a bit of work that doesn't actually align with your strategy, and so it's something you shouldn't be doing. And being in isolation, it can be missed out, but once you get it into a portfolio and you have people looking at the entire portfolio, it is much easier to spot something like that and basically to weed it out. Maximising the value of the portfolio requires careful examination of the components that comprise the portfolio. And as you remember, the components are the project, bits of operation work, subsidiary projects and programs and other portfolios, so a whole mix. But the component could be any one of those. Components are prioritised so that those contributing the most to the organisation's strategic objectives have the required financial, team and physical resources. And that reminds me of actually managing a project where you have some activities on the critical path, and if any one of those activities is held up, then it's going to slow the entire project. It's going to hold the entire project up. And so what you start to do is you identify those particular critical activities, and then you start putting more time, more people, more resources into them. And so now we're taking that up to the portfolio level. Instead of looking at individual activities, you're looking at maybe programs, other portfolios, pieces of work, subsidiary projects rather, and then seeing which ones are contributing the greatest, or alternatively, which ones are holding the company back the most, and you can start putting a lot more resources into those. For example, an infrastructure organisation that has the strategic objective of maximising returns on investments may put together a portfolio that includes a mix of projects in oil and gas, power, water, roads, rail and airports. From this mix, the organisation may choose to manage related projects as one portfolio. All of the power projects may be grouped under a power portfolio. Similarly, all the water projects grouped under the water portfolio. However, when the organisation has projects in designing and constructing a power plant and then operates the power plant to generate energy, these related projects can be grouped in one program. The power program and similar water program become integral components of the portfolio of the infrastructure organisation. 4. Operations management. You will find this on page 16 of the PMBOK guide. And this is an area that is really outside the scope of formal project management as described in the PMBOK guide. Operations management is concerned with the ongoing production of goods and or service. It's the business as usual. It ensures that business operations continue efficiently by using the optimal resources needed to meet customer demands. It's concerned with managing processes that transform inputs, for example, materials, components, energy and labour, into outputs, e.g. Products, goods and or services. Number 5, operations and project management. Changes in business or organisational operations may be the focus of a project, specifically when there are substantial changes to business operations as a result of a new product or service delivery. Ongoing operations are outside of the scope of a project. However, there are intersecting points where the two areas cross. Projects can intersect with operations at various points during the product life cycle, such as when developing a new product, upgrading a product or expanding outputs, when improving operations or the product development process, or at the end of the project life cycle, and at each closeout phase. At each point, deliverables and knowledge are transferred between the project and operations for implementation of the delivered work. This implementation occurs through a transfer of project resources or knowledge to operations, or through a transfer of operational resources to the project. For example, when I'm managing an information technology project and we create a software package, at one stage we will hand over various deliverables to the operations team, and so they can get them up and running, and by the end of the project we'll have handed over all of those products. Operations will be using them, and we will provide a manual and instructions and perhaps training to enable the support team to be able to maintain those operations in use. And that brings us to the end of relationship of project, program, portfolio and operations management. The next lesson is components of the PMBOK guide. Please read the corresponding chapter in the PMBOK guide before watching the video. One point four, components of the PMBOK guide. Projects comprise several key components that, when effectively managed, result in their successful completion. This guide identifies and explains these components. The various components interrelate to each other during the management of a project. The key components are described briefly in Table 1.3. These components are more fully explained in the sections that follow the table. Please pay particular attention to this diagram because you can see that the first entry mentions a series of phases that the project passes through, and the second mentions project phases. However, the phases that the project passes through and project phases are two quite different things. They're not related despite the name. This catches a lot of people on the exam. The series of phases should really be called the series of stages or similar, because it means, for example, initiation phase, planning phase and so on. But a project phase is more like a mini project within the main project. For example, if you're managing a project to build an office block, you might have a separate project phase to do the landscaping. It's within the main project but managed as a separate project. Component 1 of the PMBOK guide is the project life cycle. A project life cycle is a series of phases that a project passes through from its start to its completion. You need to know that for the examination. It provides the basic framework for managing the project. This basic framework applies regardless of the specific project work involved. The phases may be sequential, iterative, i.e. you do them over and over again, or overlapping, i.e. you may do two at the same time, two or more at the same time. All projects can be mapped to the generic life cycle shown in figure 1.5, and please note that this generic life cycle appears on the exam now and then, so you need to memorize that. It's quite a simple thing to learn. And although in this diagram it's quite hard to see the forest for the trees, the generic life cycle is up at the top of the diagram, and you can see it's 1. Starting the project. 2. Organising and preparing. 3. Carrying out the work. 4. Ending the project. And in this section on life cycles, when you see the word phase, think of a stage such as those in the generic life cycle. Development life cycles can be predictive, iterative, incremental, adaptive, or a hybrid model. What does that mean? In a predictive life cycle, the project scope, time and cost are determined in the early phases of the life cycle. The word predictive means being able to predict or to see ahead, because you're trying to predict everything in detail right from the start of the project, which is the time when you know the least about it. It's also referred to as a waterfall life cycle because it's like walking down a flight of stairs, but you can't go back up the stairs again. And so it's like taking a canoe over a series of waterfalls. In an iterative life cycle, the project scope is generally determined early in the project life cycle, but time and cost estimates are routinely modified as the project team's understanding of the product increases. Iterations develop the project through a series of repeated cycles, while increments successfully add to the functionality of the product. And so here you are acknowledging that trying to predict everything in detail right from the start of the project when you know the least about it is probably not the best way to do it. And so in an iterative life cycle, you're treating the project more like an experiment, which in many cases, especially in information technology projects, that's exactly what it is. In an incremental life cycle, the deliverable is produced through a series of iterations that successfully add functionality within a predetermined time frame. The deliverable contains the necessary and sufficient capability to be considered complete only after the final iteration. This one reminds me of the old riddle, how can you eat a whole elephant? Answer, one bite at a time. Adaptive life cycles are agile, iterative or incremental. The detailed scope is defined and approved before the start of one iteration. Adaptive life cycles are also referred to as agile or change-driven life cycles. This type of life cycle is fast-moving, and though it's far removed from the waterfall, when you're managing an adaptive life cycle project, it can feel like you're in that little canoe plummeting over a waterfall. A hybrid life cycle is a combination of predictive and adaptive life cycle. These elements of the project that are well known or have fixed requirements follow a predictive development life cycle, and those elements that are still evolving follow an adaptive development life cycle. It's up to the project management team, not just the project manager, to determine the best life cycle for each project. The project life cycle needs to be flexible enough to deal with the variety of factors included in the project. Life cycle flexibility may be accomplished by identifying the process or processes needed to be performed at each phase, performing the process or processes identified in the appropriate phase, adjusting the various attributes of a phase, the example name, duration, exit criteria and entrance criteria. Project life cycles are independent of product life cycles which may be produced by a project. A product life cycle is a series of phases that represent the evolution of the product from concept through delivery, growth, maturity and to its eventual end of life or retirement. For example, a project life cycle to develop the first Concorde supersonic aircraft took about 8 years, but the product life cycle was about 46 years. That's 8 years of development plus 38 years until retired from service. However, I noticed recently that one Concorde has been bought by a group of businessmen who are hoping to put it back into service, and so the product life cycle might end up a lot longer than the 46 years. Project phase. The PMBOK guide says a project phase is a collection of logically related project activities that culminates in the completion of one or more deliverables. The phases in a life cycle can be described by a variety of attributes. Attributes may be measurable and unique to a specific phase. Attributes may include the name, for example, Phase A, Phase B, Phase 1, Phase 2, proposal phase, numbering, e.g. 3 phases in the project, 5 phases in the project, duration, example, 1 week, 1 month, 1 quarter, resource requirements, e.g. people, buildings, equipment, entrance criteria for a project to move into that phase, e.g. specified approvals documents, specified documents completed, and exit criteria for a project to complete a phase, e.g. documented approvals, completed documents, completed deliverables. Projects may be separated into distinct phases or subcomponents. These phases or subcomponents are generally given names that indicate the type of work done in that phase. You can find a list of typical phase names on page 20 of the PMBOK guide, but they could include names such as build, test, transition, etc. Decision points, example funding, project go, no go, and milestone review. Number 3, phase gate. This is where you check the project performance at the end of a phase and management decides if the project should continue. You can read more about this on page 21 of the PMBOK guide. 4, project management processes. The project lifecycle is managed by executing a series of project management activities known as project management processes. Every project management process produces one or more outputs from one or more inputs by using appropriate project management tools and techniques. And you will find that we'll actually be spending most of the rest of this course on processes with their inputs, tools and techniques and outputs. The output can be a deliverable or an outcome. Outcomes are an end result of a process. Project management processes apply globally across industries. Project management processes are logically linked by the outputs they produce. Processes may contain overlapping activities that occur throughout the project. The output of one process generally results in either an input to another process or a deliverable of the project or project phase. The number of process iterations and interactions between processes varies based on the needs of the project. Processes generally fall into one of 3 categories. Processes used once or at predetermined points in the project. The processes develop project charter and close project or phase are good examples of that. Processes that are performed periodically as needed. The processes acquire resources is performed as resources are needed. The process conduct procurements is performed prior to needing the procured item. Processes that are performed continually throughout the project. The process define activity may occur throughout the project lifecycle, especially if the project uses rolling wave planning or an adaptive development approach. Many of the monitoring and controlling processes are ongoing from the start of the project until it is closed out. Project management is accomplished through the appropriate application and integration of logically grouped project management processes. While there are different ways of grouping processes, the PMBOK guide groups processes into 5 categories called process groups. Okay, starting with project management process group. It's logical grouping of project management processes to achieve specific project objectives. Process groups are independent of project phases. Project management processes are grouped into the following 5 project management business groups. Initiating process group. Those processes performed to define a new project or a new phase of an existing project by obtaining authorization to start the project or phase. Planning process group. The process is required to establish the scope of the project, refine the objectives and define the course of action required to attain the objectives that the project was undertaken to achieve. Executing process group. Those processes performed to complete the work defined in the project management plan to satisfy project requirements. And just a reminder, as I've said a couple of times so far, and we'll cover in more detail later, the project plan is not the project schedule. A project plan is a collection of 18 plans which includes a project schedule. Monitoring and controlling process group. Those processes required to track, review and regulate the progress and performance of the project. Identify any areas in which changes to the plan are required and initiate the corresponding changes. Closing process group. Those processes performed to formally complete or close the project, phase or contract. And all those definitions for the 5 process groups are important for the examination. Process flow diagrams are used throughout the guide. The project management processes are linked by specific inputs and outputs where the result of or outcome of one process may become the input to another process that is not necessarily in the same process group. Note that process groups are not the same as project phases. Number 6, project management knowledge areas. In addition to the process groups, processes are also categorized by knowledge areas, and it is these knowledge areas that we're going to spend most of the time on the course. And each one of the knowledge areas will be divided into a number of processes. You'll find there's a separate module for each area, each knowledge area, each containing a set of lessons. And I have aligned the numbering of the modules and lessons with the PMBOK guide numbering to make it pretty easy to hop between one and the other. But something to be very wary of is that a lot of the knowledge areas appear in sequence in the PMBOK guide contents page, which appears to be a logical sequence. They are in fact used in almost any order. They overlap, they're interdependent, and they may be repeated many times. Now let's look at the 10 knowledge areas, and I've included the PMBOK definition of each one, as you'll need to know these, or at least recognize these in the examination. 1. Project integration management includes the processes and activities to identify, define, combine, unify and coordinate the various processes and project management activities within the project management process groups. This is the knowledge area where the project manager operates, because the project management role is integrative by nature. The remaining knowledge areas are the domain of various specialists and technical experts such as financial, risk and scheduling experts, etc. But project integration management is center stage for project manager. Number 2, project scope management includes the processes required to ensure the project includes all of the work required and only the work required to complete the project successfully. And that is one of the most common definitions on the examination. Number 3, project schedule management includes the processes required to manage the timely completion of the project. This knowledge area has been renamed in the 6th edition of the PMBOK guide. Previously it was known as project time management, but the PMI review committee suggested that time can't be changed. It is only the processes that can be changed inside the time, because time always progresses at a constant rate no matter what you do. Personally, I think this is changing words just for the sake of changing words, but you need to do it for the examination. Number 4, project cost management includes the processes involved in planning, estimating, budgeting, financing, funding, managing and controlling costs so the project can be completed within the approved budget. Number 5, project quality management includes the processes for incorporating the organization's quality policy regarding planning, managing and controlling project and product quality requirements in order to make stakeholder expectations. And just reminding you, these definitions are all important for the examination. Number 6, project resource management includes the processes to identify, acquire and manage the resources needed for the successful completion of the project. This knowledge area changed with the 6th edition of the PMBOK guide. It's not just a name change or big changes into it. Previously it was called Project Human Resource Management, but in this edition it has been expanded to include all physical resources as well as the team resources. Number 7, project communications management includes the processes required to ensure timely and appropriate planning, collection, creation, distribution, storage, retrieval, management, control, monitoring and ultimate disposition of project information. Now, I'm not sure about that word disposition. Maybe it means something different in America than from the rest of the world, but that actually means the disposal of the information. It's quite often business information has to be kept by law, but usually it's written in the law that after a certain number of years that information can then be disposed of or destroyed. 8, project risk management includes the processes of conducting risk management planning, identification, analysis, response planning, response implementation and monitoring risk on a project. Knowledge area number 9, project procurement management, includes the processes necessary to purchase or acquire products, services or results needed from outside the project team. Number 10, project stakeholder management, includes the processes required to identify the people, groups or organisations that could impact or be impacted by the project, to analyse stakeholder expectations and their impact on the project, and to develop appropriate management strategies to effectively engage stakeholders in project management decisions and execution. Please study Table 1.4, which maps the project management process groups and knowledge areas. And I mean, study this in detail many times. It is really important. It will answer a lot of questions for you, and it'll answer a lot of questions on the examination. And you'll find this on page 25 of the PMBOK guide. And that brings us to the end of components of the PMBOK guide. The next module is tailoring. Please read the corresponding chapter in the PMBOK guide before watching the video so that you can tailor your studies. One 1.5 Tailoring. Previously we have covered the importance of projects and project management tools and techniques in delivering benefits to the organisation and keeping the organisation up to date, compliant with legislation and efficient and competitive. But there is something else needed too, and that is a robust project management methodology. It may come as a surprise to many of you and as a shock to others that the PMBOK guide is not a project methodology. But how can this be, you say? What kind of heresy is this? It's true. The PMBOK guide is not a project methodology. In fact, I have been interviewed for jobs before and they've asked me what sort of project management methodologies I use, and I say I use Prince 2, and they say, do you do any others? I say, yes, I do PMBOK. Great, we use PMBOK methodology here. But as I said, PMBOK guide is not a project management methodology. Can I prove it? Easy. The PMBOK guide itself says on page 28, usually project managers apply a project management methodology to their work. A methodology is a system of practices, techniques, procedures and rules used by those who work in a discipline. This definition makes it clear that the guide itself is not a methodology. So the PMBOK guide has just said that it's not a methodology. You will find that wherever you go to manage projects, you can't just open the PMBOK guide and use it as a series of steps to direct you or to set up authorities or to find phases or stages and so on. You always need something else, a methodology. Project management methodologies may be developed by experts within the organisation. They can be purchased from vendors. obtained from professional associations or acquired from government agencies. Most organisations and project managers, they devise their own methodology to work with the PMBOK guide, or else they purchase one. Now, I've developed many myself over the years, but I find one that works particularly well with the PMBOK guide is Prince2. And something that's pretty good about Prince2 is actually free. You don't have to buy Prince2. Whereas if you look at some of these other methodologies which are not as good as Prince2, and they're asking a big fat fee just to use them. You can develop your own, as I've done. They're not going to be anywhere near as good as Prince2, and they'll take a lot of time and effort. You're much better off using something which has been proven over many years to be a very robust framework. But the thing about Prince2 is it does not go into depth in all the necessary tools and techniques. It's a framework. But the PMBOK guide does go into all the depth needed and all the necessary tools and techniques, but it's not a framework. So once you pass a PMP exam, I would recommend considering studying for a Prince2 certification. It just makes sense. But you won't be asked questions about project management methodologies in the PMP exam. The project manager collaborates with the project team, sponsor, organisational management to decide upon the appropriate project management processes, inputs, tools, techniques, outputs and life cycle phases to use in the management of a project. Take into consideration the project environment, the organisational culture, the stakeholder needs and other factors. This selection activity is known as tailoring project management to the project. And if you're familiar with Prince2, you will immediately realise that the tailoring in PMBOK there's not really a lot to it, not compared with the Prince2. And so there's a good chance you will see something on tailoring in the examination. The PMBOK guide says tailoring is necessary because each project is unique. Not every process, tool, technique, input or output identified in the PMBOK guide is required for every project. Tailoring should address the competing constraints of scope, schedule, cost, resources, quality and risk. In addition, consideration of whether the customer of the project is internal or external to the organisation may affect project management tailoring decisions. Sound project management methodologies take into account the unique nature of projects and allow tailoring to some extent by the project manager. However, the tailoring that is included in the methodology may still require additional tailoring for a given project. And that brings us to the end of a very short section on tailoring. The next lesson in the module is 1.6, Project Management Business Documents. Please read the corresponding chapter of the PMBOK guide before watching the video. And as a spoiler, let me just say that Project Management Business Documents are not the same as Project Management Documents. So hopefully that's got your interest up a bit. (1.6) Project Management Business Documents. Now, as I said in my spoiler alert from the previous lesson, project management business documents are not the same as project management documents. I don't know why they have the names so similar. On a project, there are 33 project management documents, but they're just 2 business documents and they're not treated the same way. So this is the project management business documents. The project manager needs to ensure that the project management approach captures the intent of business documents, and that's the purpose of the documents, and these documents are defined in table 1.5. PMBOK guide says these two documents are interdependent and iteratively developed and maintained throughout the life cycle of the project. The project sponsor is generally accountable for the development and maintenance of the project business case document. The project manager is responsible for providing recommendations and oversight to keep the project business case, project management plan, project charter and project benefits management plan success measures in alignment with one another and with the goals and objectives of the organisation. Project managers should appropriately tailor the noted project management documents for their projects. Now stop there for a moment. You've almost certainly misunderstood what I just said. Almost everyone does. And that misunderstanding can cost you at least 2 questions on the exam, probably more. We're talking about project business documents, right? The PMBOK guide says project managers should appropriately tailor the noted project management documents for their projects. Read it carefully. The PMBOK guide is not saying project managers should appropriately tailor the noted project business documents for their projects. The paragraph started talking about project business documents, but in the sentence it is talking about project management documents, not project business documents, also called project management business documents. Feeling confused? Project manager uses the two project business documents, the business case and the benefits management plan, but is not authorised to change them. On the project, there are also 33 project management documents, sometimes just called project documents, and the project manager will change these. The paragraph tells us that the project manager can recommend changes to the business documents, but they're maintained by the sponsor. Very important for the exam. Figure 1.8 illustrates the interrelationship of these critical business documents and the needs assessments, as well as an approximation of the life cycle of these various documents against the generic life cycle. 1. Project business case. The PMBOK guide says the project business case is a documented economic feasibility study used to establish the validity of the benefits of a selected component, lacking sufficient definition, and that is used as a basis for the authorization of further project management activities. The business case lists the objectives and the reasons for project initiation. It helps measure the project success at the end of the project against the project objectives. The business case is a project business document that is used throughout the project lifecycle. The business case may be used before the project initiation. It may result in a go, no-go decision for the project. A needs assessment often precedes the business case. The needs assessment involves understanding business goals and objectives and issues and opportunities and recommending proposals to address them. The results of the needs assessment may be summarised in the business case document. The process of defining a business need, analysing the situation, making recommendations and defining evaluation criteria is applicable to any organisation's projects. A business case may include documenting the following. And in the exam you may be asked a question on the following headings, plus of course all of the previous uses of the business case. Okay, so started with business needs. Determination of what is prompting the need for action. Why are we doing this? Do we need to fix something? Do we need to increase sales? Do we need to comply with legislation, for example? Situational statement documenting the business problem or opportunity to be addressed, including the value to be delivered to the organisation. Was this a specific problem, opportunity or mandate that is driving this? Identification of stakeholders affected and identification of the scope. This is not the scope statement initially, it is just the main deliverables, but this will be progressively elaborated during the project to form the scope statement. Analysis of the situation. So far we've said that perhaps we can see an opportunity to increase sales by developing a better type of mousetrap. We have listed the main affected stakeholders. Please note that mice are not considered stakeholders, even though they will be affected by the project or perceive themselves to be affected by the project. Now we need to properly analyse the situation rather than just rushing ahead in case we end up in a trap ourselves. The analysis might include identification of organisational strategies, goals and objectives, identification of root causes of the problem or main contributors to the opportunity, gap analysis of capabilities needed for the project versus existing capabilities of the organisation, identification of known risks, identification of critical success factors, identification of decision criteria by which the various courses of action can be assessed. Examples of criteria categories used for analysis of a situation are required. This is a criterion that must be fulfilled, e.g. the mousetrap must be able to kill mice swiftly. Desired. This is a criterion that we would really like to have fulfilled, but it is not absolutely essential. E.g. we'd prefer it if the trap did not require food as bait. The next one is optional. This is a criterion that is not essential. Fulfillment of this criterion may become a differentiator between alternative courses of action, and that's an important note for the examination, that although it's optional, we don't actually need it. If there's nothing else to choose on, we may use that to choose the project. E.g. the mousetrap won't harm white mice because we don't want pet mice to get harmed by our trap. That's an option. We don't need to have it. It would be nice. Identification of a set of options to be considered for addressing the business problem or opportunity. The most commonly used three options are do nothing. This is referred to as the business as usual option. Selection of this option results in the project not being authorised, i.e. what happens if we don't develop a new mousetrap. 2. The minimum work possible to address the problem or opportunity. The minimum may be established by identifying the set of documented criteria that are key at addressing the problem or opportunity. The next option is do more than the minimum work possible to address the problem or opportunity. This option meets the minimum set of criteria and some or all of the other documented criteria. There may be more than one of these options documented in the business case. Next is the recommendation. We are considering the reasons for starting a project. We've analysed the situation in detail and now we have considered options. Now is the time to pull all this information together and recommend what the organisation should do. A statement of the recommended option to pursue in the project, e.g. we will develop an electric mousetrap which is artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities so it can constantly evolve to become an even better mousetrap. Items to include in the statement may include analysis results for the potential options, constraints, assumptions, risks and dependencies for potential options, and success measures. An implementation approach that may include milestones, dependencies and roles and responsibilities. That brings us to evaluation. Statement describing the plan for measuring benefits the project will deliver. This will cover not just the benefits realised, if any, during the project. For example, during testing, the project will probably reduce the number of mice in the organisation. But we also want to look at benefits when the project has moved into operation. The business case document provides the basis to measure success and progress throughout the project lifecycle by comparing the results with the objectives and the identified success criteria. 2. The Project Benefits Management Plan. The Project Benefits Management Plan is the document that describes how and when the benefits of the project will be delivered and describes the mechanisms that should be in place to measure those benefits. For example, if the project is intended to enable the service desk to resolve customer problems 20% faster on average. What does this actually mean and how can it be measured? The PMBOK guide says a project benefit is defined as the outcome of actions, behaviours, products, services or results that provide value to the sponsoring organisation as well as to the project's intended beneficiaries. Development of the benefits management plan begins early in the life cycle with the definition of the target benefits to be realised. The benefits management plan describes key elements of the benefits and may include documenting the following. Firstly, the target benefits, e.g. the expected tangible and intangible value to be gained by the implementation of the project. Financial value is expressed as net present value, which we'll cover later in the course. Strategic alignment, e.g. how well the project benefits align to the business strategies of the organisation. The time frame for realising benefits, e.g. benefits by phase, short-term, long-term and ongoing. Benefits owner, for example, the accountable person to monitor, record and report realised benefits throughout the time frame established in the plan. And often it's what we would call one of the business users would be involved in doing that. Someone who actually is going to use the products, or rather that their staff is going to be using the products, they're the best one to check it out. Next one is the metrics, i.e. the measures to be used to show benefits realised, direct measures and indirect measures. This is a very important one. Benefits must be measurable. This is a very important one. Benefits must be measurable, because if you can't measure them, how can you tell if the project was a success? In the example of the service desk, I said the customer problems were to be solved 20% faster on average. But if I had just said the service desk has to solve customer problems faster, you can't measure this and so you can't tell if the project actually achieved it. Next is assumptions, e.g. factors expected to be in place or to be in evidence, and risks. Example, risks for realisation of the benefits. Developing the benefits management plan makes use of the data and information documented in the business case and needs assessment. For example, the cost-benefit analysis recorded in the documents illustrate the estimate of costs compared with the value of the benefits realised by the project. The benefits management plan and project management plan include a description of how the business value resulting from the project becomes part of the organisation's ongoing operations, including the metrics to be used. The metrics provide verification of the business value and validation of the project's success. So just a reminder, benefits need to be measurable, otherwise you don't know for sure that you've achieved them. Number 3, the project charter and project management plan. For the examination, please remember the project charter is defined as a document issued by the project sponsor that formally authorises the existence of a project and provides a project manager with the authority to apply organisational resources to project activities. We'll cover this more in integration management. The project management plan is defined as a document that describes how the project will be executed, monitored and controlled. There are 33 project documents in a project which are used to manage the project, but they are not part of the project management plan. Number 4, project success measures. Please read project success measures in the project guide, page 34. It's a very simple section to understand. It's just really a very long list. That brings us to the end of project management business documents and also to the end of foundational elements module. At the start of this module, I promised that you'd learn important information from it, and I've no doubt that you have. The next module is 2.0, environments in which projects operate. Please read the corresponding chapter in the PMBOK guide before watching the video so that you can operate well in the examination environment.